Yes, it's so bad. It's really bad. And we combined score gave it a 5.
And donuts. We said donuts.
Hey everybody, welcome to Blood and Donuts. I'm Tony.
And I'm Chris. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks for joining. Special episode today, y'all. We're looking back at this year's episode reviews to rank the best and worst horror movies of the year.
Talking about the top 5 films that we awarded the most donuts to and the bottom 5 that barely earned a crumb.
Which movies thrilled us?
Oh, that was so fast.
And the ones that flopped harder than a bad jump scare.
Grab your donuts.
Ooh, I'd sell my soul for a donut.
Settle in, and let's dive into the sweetest and sourest horror movies that we reviewed this year. Fifth worst movie we rated all year is Tarot 2024.
Yeah, Tarot. So this is one that we were looking forward to for a long time. We were watching the trailer, had a really good trailer. Some of those monsters, it kind of reminded us of 13 Ghosts, didn't it? There was monsters. Yeah. The ghosts looked great. But we went to this one together in the movie theater. It just fell flat.
And it was just a letdown on the delivery. And we've used the word trope a lot. This was definitely the tropiest movie of all. You know, you had it all in there.
Yeah.
The mascots, like you said, they were really cool. But the actors and stuff, like it's like the actors were out of place in the movie.
Wait, that's you, Madeline.
The Hanged Man indicates ultimate surrender.
They could have done so much more with that material.
This movie, and just like kind of like a lot of these movies that are going to be in this bottom 5 list, I felt like we've seen this movie before. You've seen it 100 times, and it's been done so much better. The dialogue between these college kids was horrible. It was like I wrote it. It didn't make sense. Yeah. They kept going back to this house. It was just
there was no cursing. It was PG-13. It was
boxed in. Oh my God.
Weird.
It was
like they're getting terrorized and nobody even said the F word.
Yes, yeah.
It's totally out of place.
But again, this one got a 9 out of us, a 5 and a 4. So it's not the worst on this list because there are some genuine good scares, like in the train station. Some of those,
yes,
the ghost, that apparition looked really good in the train station. And of course, there was like a witch in the attic as well that looked pretty freaky too. So
yeah, and I think that's what kind of saved it was the mascots themselves, you know?
Yeah. Coming in at number 4, Valentine.
Ooh, Valentine. So we watched this as this was part of our stay on theme. We were all about the themes back then at the beginning of the year. It was like, okay, we got to do snowy movies. We got to do hey, Valentine's coming up. Let's do this one from 2001.
Yes.
And boy, this is like early cheesy 2000s. Could have been made in the late 90s. This one for me is buried deep in the shadow of Scream.
90s, right after Scream, 1996 came out. Here came all the Scream knockoffs. And this is what 90s horror was all about. Starring Denise Richards, David Boreanaz, and a couple other very recognizable teen actors. Boreanaz.
He played on that name.
He was in Bones, wasn't he? And just like so, and you know what? This is not, again, this is one of those movies that I could probably watch again. And this movie's probably a lot of y'all's guilty pleasure. You got that Cupid killer. I love that Cupid mask. And
mask is good.
You even have a twist there at the end, even though you could have called it and seen it from a mile away. The writing is like goofy almost. It was like, is this a comedy?
Really,
is this a horror
I wonder
film?
if they were on strike at the time. Like, I feel like the writers were on strike.
I mean, Milton wouldn't hurt you.
Well, he attacked me at a dance in junior high, and he got sent to reform school because of it.
Well, that would explain why he threatened you. But why go after Shelley? Why are you friends?
I don't know, but he is.
They're on strike, so like they had other people. Oh, we got to get this movie out. Let's get it done.
That's right. What saves this movie is there's some really good creative kills in this. There's a glass kill. I think Denise Richards gets shocked in a hot tub.
Yep.
Yeah, some guy falls out of there's a cadaver that falls out of a freezer at one point, and there's a jump scare there at the beginning. So this movie is not total garbage, but at the same time, you and I together, we gave it a 7. So we did not recommend. We thought that there were better things out there, especially 90s slashers.
Coming in at number 3 is going to be Brooklyn 4-5.
Brooklyn 4-5. So I opened up a list of top movies from 2024 or 2023. I forget which year this was from. It
I
was
think it was 2023. Yeah.
And so this was on. This was a Shudder exclusive, and this was on that list. So I was like, Chris, this is apparently a good movie. We should do this.
I have to end the seance before we break the circle. Look.
And it was not. It was like it was filmed in one room. It was a bunch of stage actors. It was way too long. It was all dialogue. And then when you did get some ghostly features or whatever, it was kind of like old school 80s FX, right?
This one, honestly, this would, for me, I would have given this a 1. I think I gave it a 3 just because I felt really bad. I think the director or the writer, he wrote it for like his dad or granddad who was like a war veteran or something.
Yeah.
So I almost felt bad giving it too bad of a score because I do think that the actors themselves were great.
Yeah, the actors were great.
But I did think, I thought the story, once it like finally unfolded, it was kind of convoluted. And boy, the like you said, the CGIs were from like the Ghostbusters. Bad.
Boring movie, hard to finish. Yeah. And like you, if I'm looking at this list, what's the one that if you were like you put a gun to my head and you're like, you got to watch one of these movies, that would be Brooklyn 4-5. Might be one of the tougher ones to watch. I might watch one of these others instead of that. Coming in at number 2, Imaginary 2024. High hopes for this one.
It came out in March. I remember I took my kid to this one and he loved it. He was like, "Oh man, that was really scary, Dad." Only us in the theater, by the way. No one else was in the theater.
Nobody was.
It was me, you, and the kid, and that was it. And yeah, it was. It was a bit tame for our taste. It was like, man, this movie kind of stinks. And I think it was, the teddy bear mascot. We should have known. It was geared towards like a teenage audience, I think.
I'll be right behind you. This is crazy. We can't leave you. They'll never stop coming for Alice.
It was a Blumhouse blunder again. So we've had a couple of Blumhouses. Again, in the past, they were really good. Black Phone. You can think of, there's a few others that Blumhouse has produced. Invisible Man that we really enjoyed, but Blumhouse came out with some stinkers this year, really hit or miss. And we went to the theater to see this. Again, big high hopes, creepy possessed teddy bear, but then you got to the attic space, you got to the imaginary world, and man, was it a letdown. It looked like, they glued some cotton to the top of the ceiling, really, and there was some LED lights, and it did not deliver on the ending, and it was a boring snooze fest.
And to get into the magical world, you remember she like had to hurt herself, and then it was like, no, she had to like say to her stepkid that she didn't love her or something. That was the true pain.
Sure.
It was cringe, man.
Sure.
It was really cringe.
It was very cringy. It was horrible. It was hard to finish. Like I said, there was one scare. First off, nobody died in this film. No, there's one death, and it was there at the end, which is a big no-no for horror. I'm just sorry. If I sat through an hour and a half, I think 2 hours or whatever this was, I mean, show me some death. Show me something. Show me some scary parts. But it just didn't deliver. And especially there at the end, I felt like it was just a lackluster attempt, a money grab on Blumhouse. These 2 films right here that we went and saw, 3 movies that we went and saw, Tarot, Imaginary, and this next film, which we're about to mention, they should have went right to Peacock, right to Netflix, and we should have never went and wasted our money in the movie theater on them.
Speaking of lame cash grabs from probably Blumhouse, again, at number 1 is Night Swim 2024, Tony. This was the January release.
A big build up to this. This was like going to start the horror movie season off great and with a blast. And we were like, last January, we're going to the movies. We're going to watch this. And it was awful. Now, Kurt Russell's son in there, we're like, oh, this is going to be great. Kurt Russell, we love John Carpenter's The Thing, and his acting was okay, but at the end of the day, he was a hurt baseball player, and they kept putting baseball tropes in there. The pool was haunted, and the story behind the pool was so goofy.
Some water is magic.
Before there was a house or a pool, there was a spring in the ground.
This was a very expensive Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, which did not pan out in the end.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the review, is that the tale of the dead man's float from Are You Afraid of the Dark had a creepier ghost or creepier, demon than this thing.
Go watch that.
It was built in a haunted spring and blah blah blah, and he's a ex-baseball player who suddenly healed his arm and he's better now, and then he gets possessed. It's so bad. It's really bad. And we combined score gave it a 5. So
5 donuts. Mad that we just had to review the worst films of 24. Sitting through these movies was really tough. I need to cleanse my palate and talk about the top 5 movies that we watched.
Hey, before you get into that, I got one honorable mention for the top 5 that I feel should be in the top 5, but it sadly didn't make it. It's 1 point away, and that is When Evil Lurks. For me, that was a great one. It was a new take on a possession horror. It was really gory and gritty. Our friend John came on the podcast and talked about that one with us. Boy, that one, for me, I gave it our first ever perfect score on the podcast. And I think you gave it an 11. It's not a perfect movie, is what you said. For me, I felt like the pros vastly outweighed the cons. So I had to throw that honorable mention in there for When Evil Lurks.
And I'm glad you did, because we just, the top 2, 3 movies of our worst 5 were made in 2024. This is a movie that came out in 2024. Is that correct?
It was late 2023. I believe.
Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, it's a newer film that actually captivated us. We thought it was one of the best horror films that we had seen. It wasn't a perfect movie, and like you said, it almost made it into the top 5. An honorable mention for me would be the original Nightmare on Elm Street. This might piss some people off that we didn't put it. It didn't make it to a perfect score from both of us.
Yeah.
Which this is one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies from the franchise.
Yeah.
Heather Langenkamp, the scares, Wes Craven directed this. It is some of the best special effects I have ever seen. What made it lose a couple of points for us and why it didn't make it into that top 5 is that ending was so bad. It was such a money grab. They wanted to make more sequels from this, that the movie, the ending part didn't make sense. And it is a notoriously bad ending. Other than that, one of the best horror films of all time, and I would highly recommend one of my favorite movies, A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1980. Coming in at number 5, It, Chapter 1 from 2017. It got 25 donuts from us. Almost a perfect score, Chris.
That is and this is a great remake on an already excellent movie. I think Bill Skarsgård does a great job playing the clown that Tim Curry made legendary. The kid acting was great. We always talk about kid acting. It can make or break a movie. This one did a great job in that, and a story that is a great movie among horror fans.
Stephen King, what he does best is he writes good dialogue for teenagers growing up. You've seen Stand By Me. The scares are good. The filler with the kids and the story behind them is just as good. That's what makes this an almost perfect movie. I was intrigued the whole way. Typically in a horror movie, you're kind of just like, there's slow parts, there's beginning parts, there's boring parts.
It doesn't feel like filler.
This one doesn't feel like filler. You're really engaged and you want to know the story. These kids going around town. Why did Georgie drown, and where did he go, and where's this evil? And these kids are dealing with bullies and all around town, and their friendships and growing up and all this stuff. It is a great movie. It's one of the highest grossing horror movies of all time, and for good reason as well.
Coming in at number 4, Tony, is our teenage movie that we saw as kids, is The Ring from 2002.
The Ring from 2002 obviously gets a lot of credit for bringing Japanese horror to the United States of America. When we watched this in the movie theater live, 2002, a lot of our younger audience might not believe it, but this movie was scary. When that girl came out of that TV screen like that, when you saw that beginning jump scare, I saw her face. I mean,
I saw her face.
That's crazy.
And that video that was produced, and it showed all of those unusual, uneasy visuals. It was such a crazy movie, such a weird movie, and one of the movies that just sticks with you. One of the best horror films of all time, hands down, Chris.
Yeah. You gave this one a 13, and I gave it a 12, just shy of that perfect score. But I agree with you. It is one of the greats. And it really kind of brought that. You mentioned Japanese horror, but it brought that like kind of urban legendy kind of thing. Like, ooh, they watched the tape, and then they got a phone call. You'll die in 7 days. Like. That kind of stuff in movies, and that was back in the days of early creepypasta, copy pasta stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
Before it just kind of got oversaturated. So this one really knocked it out of the park when it came to that kind of stuff.
So now we're here at the top 3 movies that we have reviewed this year, and all 3 of these got perfect scores. And the reason we ranked one above the other, or we did it by the year that they came out, we felt like if the older they are, the higher they should be, just because of influence. If you came out in 73 or 69
seniority.
or whatever, you get seniority over the others. But these 3 are interchangeable. They're all perfect horror films in our opinion. And coming in at number 3, Scream, 1996.
So Scream, it's easy to say that this is our generation's Halloween. It's an excellent movie. It led to a whole generation of slashers and series of slashers that they themselves were great. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scary Movie got all of its roots from, this movie, as a baseline for making fun of horror movies, which Scream itself did. The actors were great. I mean, Neve Campbell, you have the early switcheroo with Drew Barrymore. It's a really fun slasher scary movie in the mid 90s.
Yeah, so you get to the mid 90s, horror slashers were dead. Michael Myers, extra. Jason was extra. Everybody had become supernatural and powerful and could come back from the dead, and it was crazy.
Jason Voorhees.
Well, that makes me think of a little girl in a pink dress sticking a hot dog through a donut.
And here comes Wes Craven. He takes a slasher and he grounds it back down to the ground. He takes it back to the ground. Ghostface, he's not perfect. He's getting his butt whooped a lot of times. You can get past him. He's running into things. He's sloppy.
You can hear him.
He's sloppy, which made it. I mean, it was so scary. I remember one of my friend's parents was like, "This is the scariest movie I've ever seen." No, you kids can't watch it. It's too scary. This movie frightened people. And that beginning scene with Drew Barrymore is one of the best scenes in horror history, hands down. And I will argue that to the death. That is such a great put together scene. This movie is so good. This is Wes Craven's swan song. Even though we talked about honorable mention, Nightmare on Elm Street didn't make it in, this is a perfect movie that, like you said, influenced decades of slashers afterwards, and it kind of like rang in a whole new era. You got You got to love it.
And it was gorier than I remember when we rewatched it. I don't remember it being that gory, and I was like, wow, this is really bloody.
And interesting and fun. And it gave you, and also, we talk about tropes. Typically, the actors, the ones who are getting preyed upon, they are unaware of tropes. But in this movie, they were all aware of them. Because you had a character who set
had rules for horror movies.
Yeah, rules for horror movies, and they said it out loud, and it kind of poked fun at itself. And it also talked about all the horror movies that came before it, as it had many mentions of horror films. It was such a love song for us horror fans. Scream, what a perfect horror movie.
Yeah. Coming in at number 2, we have the original Halloween from 1978, Tony.
If there ever was a perfect horror film, this would be it. From the beginning scene of a child POV where you didn't even know it was a child, you just hear the breathing, and then all of a sudden his parents get home and they say, "Michael," and they take that mask off. He was evil. He was evil incarnate. Dr. Loomis kind of walking us through what this guy was. This was the first perfect score movie that we've ever ranked. This is a movie that kind of introduced me to horror at a young age, and a lot of you as well. This is probably one of the most influential horror movies of all time. John Carpenter hit this out of the park. The soundtrack, the build up, the tension, everything is perfect about this movie. It ended perfectly with like, where is he? He got up there at the end, and it's showing the camera shots. If you don't know, it is such a creepy horror film. It stands up today, and it's just as good as it was in 1978.
Agreed. And if you didn't mention the soundtrack, I was going to. When you hear that theme song from Halloween, it just feels like Halloween. Like, and you could have this on in the background while your wife and kid are out there, passing out candy. You're inside making. This is for me anyway. I'm inside making stuff for
nostalgia
us to eat later. I mean, it's on in the background. You just love it. It's not overly gory or crazy. It's a great. And even just outside of horror, it's a great movie, just like our number one pick that we're going to talk about here in a minute, and Scream itself. All those top three that we're talking about, they're not just great horror movies, they're just great movies in general, and are in that discussion for best of all time. It's really something.
We talked about Tarot and how the kids' dialogue didn't add up. It didn't make sense. It was stupid. These girls and the dialogue that was written for them was perfect. And I was so invested in this friendship, and it sounded like three teenage girls talking and just going about town. And he did it in such a short amount of time. He built that. And you were personally involved with each of these girls as they were getting stalked by Michael Myers.
Yeah, his co-writer Deborah Hill, really, she wrote those teens' dialogue. I mean, they just did a great job. I mean, 40 years ago.
Coming in at number one with a perfect donut score from us, of course, The Exorcist from 1973.
Yeah, just an all-time classic. Again, like I just kind of talked about, not only a good horror movie, but just a great movie overall. The acting and casting were just fantastic. I mean, even in the beginning when there's really not much going on, he's just walking through town, and it's so good, and you're just like engrossed in it. It's really well done. The pacing spectacular. Special effects were great for them. It was 1973. This one had people running out of the theaters, getting sick and stuff. I mean, and not even for the worst parts of the film.
Crazy. If there was ever a Tarantino said this is a perfect movie, The Exorcist, he wouldn't change a thing. And I agree. From the beginning, it starts right here, and it moves up. It takes you so high and on a journey. So and The Exorcist, it's visually and the sound and everything about it, it seems like you're following a family around who is going through a crisis. It doesn't feel like it's acted. It doesn't feel like this is a production. It feels like it's real life and like a documentary or something. When you're in there and she's in the hospital and they're poking her with needles and all this stuff, and they're having a crisis. It seems real, and it seemed real to people back in 1973. And again, like you said, people were running out of this thing when Linda Blair is stabbing herself in the crotch with a cross, when her head is turning completely around. Not only that, these priests, and you get their story and how, like going through a crisis of faith. And then he comes to
Jason Miller as Father Karras is great. Yeah.
So good. And then there at the end, obviously falling, taking the demon from Linda, saving the girl, jumping outside. What a perfect movie. What a perfect ending. Wouldn't change a thing about The Exorcist and or any of these in this top five. What great movies these were, and I'm so glad that we got to review them together, Chris. Man,
it's been a fun year, man.
I hope we get some good ones in 2025. Do we have some good movies on the horizon? What do you think?
We do, man. I've got some that we kind of moved out from this year that we didn't get a chance to do. We have The Saw coming up. 13 Ghosts. Pet Sematary is going to be next, I think. Ooh. The Shining, Alien, Final Destination. We got all kinds of movies to talk about. So appreciate everybody coming along. Stick with us. We got a lot of great movies to review.
Yeah. A lot of more 13s coming up, I got a feeling, right?
I feel that too. Yeah.
26 is actually 13 perfect movies out of us. Thanks for watching, y'all. Thanks for 2 years y'all have been with us and hanging out. And this is our second ranking video. So it's been great. We'll see you in 2025.